I'll never forget the night I became a stranger to my own life. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation or a hidden affair revealed through a single moment of weakness. No, it was a gradual thing. A slow-burning truth, something I didn't realize was happening until it was too late. But this is where it started. The night I unknowingly watched my own world fall apart. It was just a normal evening, or at least it seemed that way. The kind of evening that slips through your fingers without any fanfare. I came home from work, tired as usual, ready to settle into the routine that had become my life. I didn't expect anything to be out of the ordinary. My wife, Kate, was probably curled up on the couch, watching one of her favorite shows, or maybe reading something on her tablet. There was a simplicity to our life together. We didn't need fireworks, just the quiet comfort of being with someone who knew you better than you knew yourself. I had no idea how fragile that comfort really was. The door to our apartment was slightly ajar, which was odd. I was certain I'd closed it when I left that morning. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe I'd been distracted, or maybe the wind had pushed it open. But as I stepped inside, I immediately felt the change. The apartment was too quiet, too still. I called out, but no response. "Kate?" I asked, stepping further inside, the air thick with a kind of tension I couldn't place. I set my bag down, but there was no sound from the other room. No shuffling, no answer. Nothing. I tried to shake it off. She was probably in the kitchen or the bedroom. Maybe her phone had died, and she didn't hear me call. I wandered down the hallway, half expecting to find her doing something innocuous, like staring at her phone screen, lost in her thoughts. Instead, what I found was a scene I never could have anticipated. Kate was sitting on the edge of our bed, her face partially illuminated by the dim glow of her laptop screen. She was talking, but it wasn't to anyone I recognized. It was a voice I had never heard before, calm and deep, almost too soothing. There was an intimacy to it, a familiarity that made something stir deep inside me, but I couldn't place why it felt so unsettling. Her tone was soft, but the words made my stomach churn. "I've missed this," she whispered, almost breathless, leaning closer to the screen. "No one gets me like you do." I froze in place, unsure if I should interrupt or just leave. The words hit me like a physical blow, and my mind scrambled for some kind of explanation. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a harmless conversation. Maybe I had misheard her. But then I heard it. "I've never felt this way with him," she said, almost sounding regretful. "I don't think I ever will." That's when I knew. It wasn't an accident. She wasn't just talking to a friend. She wasn't just catching up with someone from her past. She was sharing something that, at least from what I could hear, seemed far too intimate, too personal, too real. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring, listening. The longer I stood, the more my heart sank. She wasn't just reminiscing about someone from her past. She was comparing him to me, to us. I couldn't take it anymore. But I didn't confront her. Not right then. The words were too sharp, too powerful, and I wasn't sure how to respond. I had already walked into a moment I wasn't supposed to see. Maybe if I had confronted her right then, I would have found some excuse, some reason to let it go. But I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away. Away from her, away from my thoughts, away from the sick feeling that had taken root in my stomach. I wandered through the streets, not really thinking, just walking. I didn't want to face her. I didn't want to know more. But deep down, I knew I had to. The truth was out there, waiting for me. Hours passed. I had no plan, no idea what to do. The city lights blurred around me, just as everything I had known about my life and my marriage was blurring. My mind raced through 1,000 scenarios. Was she cheating? Was it something emotional? Or was it just some kind of harmless nostalgia that meant nothing? But nothing seemed harmless anymore. When I finally returned home, it was almost dawn. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, but I couldn't stay away. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Maybe for everything to make sense. Maybe for some clarity. But I walked into the apartment, and the silence hit me like a wall. Kate was still in the same place, but now her laptop was closed, and she was sitting with her head in her hands. I thought about speaking, about asking her what was going on, but I couldn't bring myself to. So I just stood there, in the doorway, watching her, while everything inside me screamed for an answer. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, pounding with every second that passed. It felt like time itself had stretched into a slow, agonizing crawl. I stood there, in the doorway of our bedroom, watching Kate with a pit in my stomach that grew deeper with every breath I took. The silence between us was heavy, more suffocating than comforting. She didn't notice me at first. I wanted to call out, to ask her what was going on, but the words didn't come. It wasn't because I was unsure of what I wanted to say, but because I was afraid of what the answer might be. I had already heard more than enough. But was it enough to confront her? Kate looked up, her face a mask of guilt and exhaustion. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw me standing there, lingering at the doorway like a shadow. She hadn't heard me come in, and the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't shock. It wasn't surprise. It was something worse. It was the recognition that the lie she had been telling herself, and me, was now undone. "Theo," she started, her voice cracking, as if she hadn't been prepared for this moment, as if she thought she could keep this hidden forever. But her voice wasn't the calm, controlled tone it usually was. There was something frantic about it now, something unsure. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but it wasn't a genuine apology. It was a defensive statement, the kind people make when they've already crossed a line and now realize the consequences are staring them in the face. She stood up, her eyes not meeting mine, like she couldn't bear to look me in the eye. It was all happening too fast for either of us. In my mind, I kept replaying the words I'd heard her say earlier, those cold, cutting words that had sliced through the comfort of our life together. I've never felt this way with him. Why did she feel the need to tell someone that? Why did she have to compare me to him? And more importantly, who was him? "I didn't mean for this to happen," Kate continued, her hands trembling as she reached for my arm. I stepped back instinctively, not because I didn't love her, but because I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. I had never seen her so vulnerable, so stripped of the confidence and the certainty she had always carried. "I don't understand, Kate," I said, finally breaking the silence. My voice felt foreign to me, rough, like I wasn't sure if I had the right to be angry or just confused. "What is this? What were you talking about?" She took a shaky breath, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had just descended on her. She didn't meet my gaze. Instead, her eyes were fixed on the floor, and I could see the fight draining out of her. She hesitated, as though searching for the right words, or maybe for words that wouldn't make this all worse. But there were no good words left. "You don't have to explain," I said, my voice low. The words just came out of me, and I didn't know if I believed them, but I was trying to make sense of the chaos inside me. "I heard you. I heard what you said. You don't need to tell me anything more." For a moment, the room was deathly still. She didn't say anything, didn't try to defend herself. She just stood there, her hands clenched at her sides, her face pale. I could see the panic in her eyes, the kind of panic that comes when you know there's no going back, when the truth has already broken everything you thought you understood about your life. "I've been trying to figure things out," she finally whispered, as if the confession was more for herself than for me. "I don't know what happened, Theo. I never planned for any of this." "You never planned for what, Kate?" I asked, my voice now rising with frustration. "You never planned to fall in love with someone else? You never planned to make me feel like I was the second choice?" She flinched at my words, and I regretted them as soon as they left my mouth. But it was too late. The truth was already out, and there was no taking it back. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She finally looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "But I've been feeling something for him. Something I didn't want to admit. I never wanted it to affect us. But I've been lying to you, lying to myself. I didn't know how to stop." The air in the room felt thick now, as though I was suffocating on the words that were being spoken. I wanted to scream, to ask her how long this had been going on, how much I had been blind to. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was paralyzed, caught between wanting to know everything and not wanting to hear another word. "Who is he, Kate?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Who is this person you've been talking to?" She looked away, biting her lip, and for a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. But finally, her voice came, almost inaudible. "It's him. David," she said. "My ex. The one I told you about." My chest tightened at the sound of the name. David. I had always known about him, of course. But I never thought he would be the reason we were here, standing on the edge of the abyss. I never thought he would be the one to take her away from me. I had always trusted her, always believed her when she told me I was the one. But now, standing there, I couldn't escape the cold truth. I took a step back, trying to absorb what she had just said. So, all this time, all this distance between us, it's been because of him. Kate nodded slowly, her eyes not leaving mine. I didn't mean for it to happen. But you've been so focused on work, on everything else. And David, he was there for me when you weren't. I didn't know what I was doing. You should have known, I said bitterly, the hurt in my chest growing. You should have known that I was here, that I've always been here. But even as the words left my lips, I knew the answer. It didn't matter anymore. She had already made her choice. And now, I was just another piece of her past. The silence between us stretched on, heavier than before, as I processed the weight of everything she had said. There were no more words left to speak. Only the knowledge that this, whatever this was no longer our marriage. It was just a shadow of what it once was. The silence between us was suffocating. Kate stood there, eyes pleading, as if she were waiting for me to somehow offer some kind of forgiveness, some excuse for the betrayal she had just admitted. But I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to feel. Everything that had once been so solid, so certain, was now crumbling at my feet, and I was too stunned to even reach down and try to pick up the pieces. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks, maybe months. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, stood before me, hollowed out by secrets. Her face, once a source of comfort, now seemed foreign to me. Her eyes, usually so warm, were clouded with guilt and fear. I don't know how to fix this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking louder might shatter whatever fragile thread was still holding us together. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But how could I? How could I believe that after everything we had been through, everything we had built, she could fall into someone else's arms so easily? The thought made my stomach twist. This wasn't just an affair of the body. This was an affair of the heart. She had chosen someone else, and no amount of apologies could undo that. I turned away, walking over to the window. The city lights outside blurred into streaks as I tried to focus on something, anything, other than the chaos in my mind. I felt like I was floating, like I wasn't really in my own body anymore. The world outside seemed so distant, so unreachable. It was as though the life I had been living had somehow split into two realities, one where I was the husband, the partner, and the other where I was just a spectator watching it all fall apart. I didn't know how long I stood there, my back to her, but when I finally turned around, Kate was still standing in the same spot, not moving, not speaking. It was as though she was waiting for me to tell her what to do, to tell her how to fix it. But I didn't know the answer. I didn't even know where to start. Do you love him? I asked, my voice trembling slightly, though I was determined not to show how deeply this cut. I had to know, even if I didn't want to hear the truth. It felt like the only question that mattered now. If she loved him, if she was choosing him, then that would be it. I would walk away, and I would never look back. Kate's lips parted, but no sound came out at first. She swallowed hard, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. She opened her mouth again, but this time her words came out in a rush. I don't know. I don't know anymore, Theo. She stopped, shaking her head as if trying to convince herself of something. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could just talk to him, just get closure. But then it felt like we picked up right where we left off, and I didn't know how to stop it. I swallowed, trying to process her words. So, this has been going on for how long, Kate? I asked, almost too quietly. The answer seemed like a weight I wasn't sure I was ready to bear. I don't know how to answer that, she whispered, and her voice cracked with the truth. We've been talking for months, but it wasn't like this until recently. I didn't think it would affect us. I thought I could keep it separate, but I was wrong. I should have told you, but I didn't want to hurt you. I felt like I was suffocating. My chest was tight, and every word she said seemed to press harder against my ribcage. How could she have kept this from me? How could she have lived this double life? The woman I had loved, trusted, wasn't the same person anymore. And I had no idea who this version of her was. You should have told me, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. This isn't something you hide. This isn't something you keep to yourself until it blows up in our faces. I know, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But the apology didn't feel like enough. It never could be enough. I turned away from her again, my hands gripping the back of the couch as though it might anchor me to something real, something solid. I needed a moment to breathe, to clear my mind. The emotions inside me were a storm. Rage, betrayal, confusion, all tangled together. It felt like everything I knew about love, about marriage, had been twisted into something unrecognizable. I don't know what to do with this, Kate, I said finally, turning back to face her. My voice was steady now, but my heart was anything but. I don't know if I can just forgive this. I don't know if I can look at you the same way again. I understand, she said quietly, her head bowed. I never wanted this, but I don't know how to make it right either. I wish I could take it all back. I wanted to shout, to throw something across the room. I wanted to break something, anything, just to feel like I had some control over this situation. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, staring at her, trying to figure out what my next move would be. Should I leave? Should I walk out the door right now and never come back? Should I stay and try to fix something that was already beyond repair? The truth was, I didn't know. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating, until it felt like the walls themselves were closing in around us. I don't think I can fix this, Kate, I said softly, finally breaking the silence. Not right now. I need time to think. I need time to figure out what's next. She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with tears that she no longer tried to hide. I understand, she said, her voice barely audible. I'll give you whatever time you need. I never meant to hurt you. But it was too late for apologies. Too late for explanations. Whatever had been between us had already been shattered, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. I don't know how long we stood there, the silence between us stretching longer than it should have. The air was thick, suffocating. I could feel the tension pulling at the edges of everything. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, nothing like what you see in the movies when someone finds out about a betrayal. No, this was different. This was quiet, and in that silence, the pain was sharper than anything I could have expected. Kate was still standing, her shoulders slumped, her hands nervously wringing in front of her. I could see the tears in her eyes, but for some reason, they didn't move me the way they should have. It was like I had become numb to her emotions, numb to the woman I had loved for years. All I could think about was how this moment, this conversation, was marking the end of something I couldn't get back. I felt a sudden rush of anger, hot and unfamiliar, boiling up inside me. It was anger that didn't make sense, because what was I angry at? At Kate for falling out of love with me? For finding someone else when I wasn't looking? Or was I angry at myself for missing the signs? For being blind to what had been happening right under my nose? I turned away from her again, walking toward the kitchen, needing some space. I needed to move, to do something. I opened the cabinet, grabbing a glass, but my hands were shaking too much to pour myself anything. I set the glass down with a quiet thud, the sound oddly loud in the otherwise quiet room. I don't want to be here anymore, I said, my voice harsh as I faced Kate again. I need to get out of here. I need to clear my head. Kate didn't argue. She didn't try to stop me. She just nodded, her face contorting with guilt, and I knew she wanted to say something more, but there was nothing left to say. What could she say? Nothing would change the reality of what we were facing. I grabbed my jacket from the chair near the door, the fabric feeling heavier than it ever had before. It felt like I was putting on armor, preparing for something I wasn't sure I could handle. As I reached for the door, I turned to her one last time. The words I had wanted to say for so long were stuck in my throat. But there was nothing left now but the quiet truth between us. I'll be back later, I said, not sure if it was a promise or a lie. I didn't know when or if I would come back. The apartment suddenly felt like a cage, and I needed air, space, time to think about everything that had just happened. When I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap in the face. The world felt strangely distant, as if everything around me was happening on the other side of some invisible barrier. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go back to that apartment. Not yet. Not after everything that had been said. I walked for hours, my feet carrying me through the streets of the city, but my mind was still back there. I kept replaying everything Kate had said, trying to make sense of it. She had been talking to David, her ex, for months. She had kept it hidden from me. She had confessed she had feelings for him, feelings she couldn't control. I could feel the weight of her words in my chest, tightening with each breath. But what did that mean for us? Was this something she could just walk away from, or was it something deeper, something more permanent? I ended up at a small bar near the edge of town. It wasn't the kind of place I usually went to, but something about it felt right. Quiet, anonymous, a place to drink and think without anyone asking questions. I walked in and found an empty stool at the far end of the bar. The bartender, a middle-aged guy with a graying beard, gave me a quick nod as I sat down. "What'll it be?" he asked, his voice rough but friendly. I didn't have to think about it. "Whiskey," I said. "Just a shot." The glass slid down the bar to me, and I took it without hesitation, the burn in my throat offering a momentary distraction from the thoughts swirling in my head. I let the heat of the alcohol settle in my chest, trying to push the chaos away, but it didn't work. It couldn't work. I took another shot, and then another. I didn't even know how much time had passed. The minutes felt like hours, and the hours felt like days. My mind drifted in and out of focus, but the one thing that was constant was the nagging feeling that I couldn't escape, that no matter how far I walked, no matter how many drinks I had, I couldn't outrun the truth of what Kate had done. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that the person I thought I knew so well had been hiding parts of herself from me. There had been moments when I thought I knew her better than anyone else. Those quiet, intimate moments where we'd laugh at inside jokes or talk about our dreams for the future. But those moments now felt hollow. I finished my drink and signaled the bartender for another, but he shook his head. "Slow down, man," he said, a look of concern in his eyes. "Don't make tonight worse than it already is." I nodded absently, pushing the empty glass toward him. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want anyone's pity. I just wanted to forget, even if only for a few minutes. I grabbed my coat and left a few bills on the counter, but the bartender called after me. "You all right, buddy?" I didn't answer. I just walked out into the night, the chill air biting at my face, trying to clear my mind, but I couldn't. As I walked through the darkened streets, the weight of everything seemed to settle deeper inside me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what came next. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to her. Not yet. Not when everything felt like a lie. It was the middle of the night when I finally decided to head back. I don't know what compelled me to go back to the apartment after all the things that had been said, after everything that had happened. Maybe I thought I could find something. An explanation, some semblance of the life I once had, or perhaps just a glimmer of the woman I thought I knew. But the closer I got to our building, the heavier the weight in my chest became, as though each step I took was pulling me deeper into some kind of nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I paused on the sidewalk outside, looking up at the dark windows of our apartment, each one seeming to mock me with its quiet emptiness. I knew I wasn't going to find the answers I wanted. I knew that confronting Kate again, when I was so raw, wasn't going to magically fix anything. But something inside me, some part of me that still clung to the hope we could salvage this, compelled me to turn the corner and walk toward the entrance. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. The slow ascent, the hum of the machinery, and the cold light above my head made it feel like I was descending into a different version of my life. I didn't know what I expected when I walked through that door. Would she be waiting for me, ready with more apologies, more explanations? Would she have changed her mind, confessed that she had made a terrible mistake? Or would she be gone? Maybe she'd already decided she was through with me. When the elevator doors opened, I was met with an eerie silence. The hallway was empty, the faint glow from the streetlights outside barely penetrating the darkness inside. I felt the weight of the air in the apartment before I even entered. Something about it had shifted, like it was holding its breath. I walked down the hall toward our door, my hand hovering over the handle, unsure if I was ready for whatever I was about to find. I pushed the door open slowly, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. It wasn't anything specific, just the faint, sterile scent of something that had been cleaned, something that had been touched recently. But it felt wrong. The place I had called home for so long now felt cold, impersonal. As I stepped inside, my eyes immediately went to the living room. The couch where we had spent countless hours watching movies, laughing, talking, empty. The kitchen, usually a place where we'd share dinner or a glass of wine after a long day, quiet. Even the small, personal touches that had always made the apartment ours felt strangely absent. I found her in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed. She was facing away from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her shoulders hunched forward as if she were trying to make herself smaller. She didn't hear me enter. I took a breath, bracing myself for whatever was to come. "Kate," I said, my voice cracking in the silence. She didn't move at first. Then, Slowly, she turned to face me, her eyes red from crying. Her expression was a mixture of exhaustion, regret, and something else I couldn't quite read. She looked like she had been waiting for me, as if she knew this moment was inevitable, but wasn't sure what would come of it. "I thought you might be back," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to call you, didn't know what to say, but I knew I couldn't just leave things like that, Theo." I took a step toward her, but my legs felt heavy. It wasn't anger I was feeling anymore. It was confusion. It was that nagging feeling that I wasn't seeing the full picture, that there were still things left unsaid, things I couldn't even begin to understand. "You don't have to explain anymore," I said, my voice more composed now, though it felt like I was lying to myself. "I've heard enough." I stopped myself. I didn't want to say it, didn't want to admit how deeply this was affecting me. "I don't know what to do with any of this, Kate." She nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. "I know," she said softly. "I don't know what to do either. I never thought we'd end up here." I walked closer to her, standing just a few feet away, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I wanted to reach out, to hold her the way I had so many times before, but I didn't. The space between us felt too wide. We were strangers now, standing in the remnants of something that once felt like home. "You said you missed him," I finally said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "David, you said you couldn't feel that way with me. I need to understand, Kate. Was it just him? Or is it something more?" Kate's face twisted with pain, but she didn't look away. She took a shaky breath and stood up from the bed, moving toward me slowly, cautiously. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe it's both. Maybe it's more than just him. Maybe it's me. I don't even know who I am anymore, Theo. I don't know how I let things get so tangled. I never meant for you to get hurt. But I've been trying to find something, some part of myself that I lost a long time ago. And I guess I got lost in the process." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but it didn't change anything. The truth was still there, staring me in the face. She had betrayed me, emotionally if not physically. She had chosen to hide her feelings, to bury the parts of herself she no longer knew how to handle. She had kept secrets from me, and that hurt more than anything. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "You should have told me," I said, the words thick with emotion. "I wouldn't have liked it. Hell, I would have hated it. But I deserve to know. We deserve to be honest with each other." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you." "I don't know what to do with this, Kate," I said again, the frustration rising in my chest. "I don't know how to move forward. You've changed. And maybe I've changed too. But this is something I can't just forgive and forget. I don't even know where to begin." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want to lose you. But I think I have." I didn't answer. What could I say? There were no words left. No comforting lies to tell either of us. The truth was out, and we were standing at the edge of something I wasn't sure we could fix. "I need time, Kate," I said finally, my voice steady but tired. "I can't do this right now. I need space to figure out what I want. And I need to think about whether this is something worth saving." She didn't argue. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand." I turned and walked away, not looking back, leaving the woman I had loved standing there, alone in the fragments of what used to be our life. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that echoed through the empty hallway. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to look at. I had left behind the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted, and in her place, there was a stranger. Someone whose choices, whose emotions, seemed foreign to me. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it wasn't the affair, it was that I didn't even know who she was anymore. I descended the stairs slowly, my steps heavy with the weight of everything I was leaving behind. The cool air outside greeted me like a slap in the face, biting through the thin jacket I had worn out. It was the middle of the night, but the city still buzzed around me, indifferent to the storm inside my chest. Cars passed, people walked by, but I was miles away from them. In that moment, I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. I walked aimlessly, my mind too clouded to form any coherent thoughts. What was I supposed to do now? What was left for me? Kate had confessed, but her confession didn't fix anything. It didn't change the fact that she had been emotionally unavailable for months. It didn't change the fact that, somewhere along the way, I had become the last person on her mind. David had slipped back into her life, and in the process, he had taken her away from me. I thought about calling someone, my best friend, perhaps, or even my brother. But I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to share this, not yet. I wasn't ready to put words to the mess inside me. I had always been the one people turned to for advice, for solutions. But in that moment, I was a man lost in a world I didn't recognize, and I didn't know how to fix it. The streets were quieter now, the hustle and bustle of the day long gone, and all I had was the sound of my own footsteps to accompany me. It was ironic, really. I had always been the kind of person who avoided confrontation, who tried to keep the peace. But now, peace felt like a distant memory, something I might never find again. Everything I had worked for, every part of my life that I had built with Kate, was slipping through my fingers, and I was powerless to stop it. After what felt like hours of walking, I found myself standing in front of a small, rundown cafe on the corner of a street I didn't recognize. It wasn't open, but I didn't care. I didn't know why I had stopped here. Maybe it was because the warm glow of the street lamp made the place seem inviting, or maybe I just needed somewhere to sit and breathe for a minute. I took a seat on the bench outside, staring out into the darkness, trying to collect my thoughts. I pulled my phone out, staring at the screen, seeing a dozen missed calls from Kate. She was trying to reach me, but I couldn't bring myself to call her back. What would I even say? Hey, thanks for telling me you've been emotionally cheating on me for months. I'll just process that over coffee and we can figure this out. It wasn't going to happen. But there was something else, the nagging thought that kept poking at the back of my mind. What if I was wrong? What if this wasn't the end? What if we could still fix this? Was there any chance left for us? Or was I just fooling myself? I had always been the type of person who believed in second chances, who believed in redemption. But Kate had crossed a line, one I wasn't sure I could come back from. How could I trust her again? How could I ever look at her the same way? My mind spiraled, turning the situation over and over in my head, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't until the sun began to rise, casting a pale light over the city, that I finally stood up and decided to move forward, to make a decision, at least for today. I walked back to my apartment, slower this time, as if I were walking toward my own future, unsure of what awaited me on the other side of the door. The apartment still felt like a stranger's place, cold and unfamiliar, but it was where I needed to be. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I had to face the truth, even if it was a truth I wasn't ready to confront. When I opened the door to the apartment, the air inside felt just as cold as when I had left. Kate wasn't there. She had left a note on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, Theo. I can't be the person you want me to be. I need to figure things out on my own. I hope you understand. I'll be back to get the rest of my things. Please, don't hate me. Kate. The note felt like a slap in the face. It was final. There was no room for negotiation, no hope for reconciliation. She had made her choice, and she was walking away. I stared at the note for what felt like an eternity. Was it over? Was this the end of everything we had built? For a moment, I thought about calling her, begging her to come back, but I didn't. I couldn't. The truth was, I was as lost as she was. Neither of us knew how to fix this, and maybe we never would. I sat down on the couch, the emptiness of the apartment swallowing me whole. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely alone. But I knew one thing. I couldn't let this define me. I couldn't let it destroy who I was. There was still a future for me. I just didn't know what it looked like yet. Days passed in a blur of confusion, anger, and sadness. The apartment that had once felt like a sanctuary now seemed like a tomb, each empty corner echoing with the silence Kate had left behind. I didn't know how to fill the space. I didn't know how to fill the hole she had carved in my life. I had been holding on to hope, foolishly clinging to the idea that she would come back, that we could fix things, but now that she was gone, really gone, there was nothing left but the remnants of what we had. Her things were still scattered around the apartment. The perfume she used to wear, the books we read together, the photos of us laughing in the sun. Everything felt like a ghost of a life that no longer existed. I kept thinking about the note she had left. I need to figure things out on my own. It felt like a final goodbye, but a part of me wondered if she was just giving herself space to make a decision. Could she come back? Was there even anything left to salvage? I tried not to think about it. I tried to focus on myself, but it wasn't easy. Every corner of the apartment reminded me of her. Every song on the radio brought me back to the moments we shared, The moments that now felt like they were part of someone else's life. The first few days after she left were the hardest. I spent most of my time pacing the apartment, trying to distract myself with work, with whatever I could find. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally, but the tiredness didn't come from lack of sleep. It came from the constant barrage of thoughts, of questions I couldn't answer. Why had she done this? Why had she let it get this far? I thought I knew Kate, but now I wasn't sure I knew anyone at all. I picked up my phone several times, thinking of calling her, but I didn't. Every time I touched it, I imagined what I would say. What could I say? Would she tell me the truth this time? Would she apologize again and ask for forgiveness? Or would I just get another round of excuses, another version of the story that made me the villain for asking too many questions? The truth was, I was scared. I was scared of the answers. Scared of hearing something that would make it impossible to ever look at her the same way again. Scared of realizing that she had already moved on, that maybe she was happier without me. The days dragged on like this until I couldn't stand the silence anymore. It was a Sunday evening when I made the decision. I didn't even know what I hoped to find, but I had to do something. I couldn't just keep sitting here, waiting for something to change. So, I picked up my keys, took a deep breath, and walked out the door. I wasn't sure where I was going. Somewhere, anywhere, but as I walked down the street, I found myself heading in the direction of her favorite park. It had always been our place. The place where we went to clear our heads, to talk about everything and nothing at the same time. When I arrived, the park was nearly empty, save for a few people walking their dogs or enjoying the evening air. I sat down on a bench, the cold metal pressing against my legs as I tried to organize my thoughts. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and for a second, my heart stopped. I pulled it out, hoping it was Kate, but it wasn't. It was a message from a friend, one of the few people I had actually talked to about everything that had been happening. "Hey man, we're all worried about you. You good?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing anything back. The truth was, I wasn't good. I wasn't okay. But I couldn't admit that, not even to my friends. I didn't want to burden them with my mess. So I typed out something vague, something that would make it seem like I was fine when I wasn't. "I'm doing all right. Just trying to figure things out." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. But even as I looked at the message, I felt the weight of it. The weight of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I didn't know how long I sat there, just staring into the distance, before I felt the presence of someone else nearby. I glanced over, and there she was, Kate. She was standing a few feet away, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her coat, her head down as if she didn't want to look me in the eye. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to say, but the words came out anyway. "You came." It wasn't a question, more like a realization. She looked up at me then, her eyes tired and swollen, but there was something else there too, a hint of something that made my heart ache. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I've been thinking about everything. About us." I stood up slowly, my legs stiff from sitting too long. "What do you want, Kate?" I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. "You left. You said you needed space, but now you're here. What do you want from me?" Her face tightened, and for a moment, she seemed unsure, hesitant. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what I want. I couldn't leave things like that. I couldn't walk away without at least trying to talk to you. To fix it." I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know if there was anything left to fix. She had hurt me in ways I wasn't sure I could recover from. She had been dishonest, had let me believe everything was fine when it wasn't. But as I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she left, I saw the same woman I had fallen in love with. The same woman who had been a part of my life for years. And that hurt more than anything else. "I don't know if I can fix this, Kate," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can trust you again." Her lips trembled, and she took a step closer. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said. "I don't even know if I deserve it. But I needed to see you, to hear you, and I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. You don't get to just say sorry and make it better. You can't undo what you did. "I know," she said, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I can't, but I want to try. I want to do whatever it takes to make things right." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could start over, that somehow we could find a way back to each other. But the truth was, I didn't know if we could. I didn't know if I could look at her without seeing the betrayal first. I didn't know if I could trust her again. But in that moment, I also knew something else. I couldn't walk away from this without at least trying. I couldn't let go without giving it one last chance. I looked at Kate, standing before me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and regret. And for the first time since everything came crashing down, I didn't feel the weight of the past pressing on me as much. It wasn't that the hurt had disappeared or that the betrayal was suddenly forgotten. But standing here in front of her, feeling the chill of the evening air and hearing her voice trembling with sincerity, I realized that maybe, just maybe, there was something worth fighting for. I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were, I said, my voice steadier than I thought it would be. I don't know if we can just pick up where we left off, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give this a chance, Kate. She looked at me, her face softening as if the weight of the world had been lifted off her shoulders. She stepped closer, hesitant at first, and then reached out, taking my hand in hers. It was such a simple gesture, yet in that moment, it felt like the most important thing in the world. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered, but I promise you, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the person you thought I was. The person I want to be, for you, for us. Her words were quiet but powerful, and in that moment, I knew that no matter how hard the road ahead might be, we had a chance. It wouldn't be easy, and I wasn't naive enough to think that everything would magically fall back into place. There would be scars, there would be moments of doubt, but there was also something real between us, something worth rebuilding. I squeezed her hand gently, a small but meaningful acknowledgement that I was willing to take that first step forward. We'll take it slow, I said, but we'll do it together. She smiled softly, her tears now replaced with something brighter. Hope, maybe. Together, she echoed, her voice steadying. We stood there for a while, not speaking, just holding on to each other. The weight of the past still lingered, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something new, something fragile, but worth nurturing. I had no illusions that it would be easy. Trust needed to be rebuilt, mistakes would need to be forgiven, but as I stood there with Kate, I knew we could move forward. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect. We would stumble, we would fall, but maybe that was part of the process. Maybe what mattered wasn't just the destination, but the fact that we were willing to walk the path, side by side, and face whatever came next. Let's go home, I said, my voice warm and sincere. I didn't know what awaited us when we walked back to that apartment, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was heading towards something that could be rebuilt, something that could become even stronger than it was before. And as we walked back to the place where everything had fallen apart, I felt a small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, we were about to build something new, something that was entirely ours. Together.